Hello and welcome to the boat shop. My name is John and the boat on the other side of that wall is Antidote. And I'm an engineer and a sailor with a dream of fixing up this old boat to go sailing around the world. Now we've got a lot of work to do first. Last time you were here we were making these COOSA panels that are going to go on the deck of the anchor locker. And today we want to start by covering them with fiberglass to prevent abrasions and bumps and dings and things. So we're going to wrap the top and we want to go around this hard edge. So to do that today we've set up something on the table here. So my hope here is that by using the table as a release surface and covering it with, of course, my favorite packing tape, we'll be able to lay down the peel ply first, then the fiberglass, and then put our piece upside down on here, get everything wet, and that should squish in nicely to this hard edge. We put down a couple of panels to act as the back edge. These are put down with carpet tape. It's basically just two-sided tape you can get at the hardware store, but it's a really good, wide, and sticky two-sided tape. Hopefully we'll be able to get this off the table without doing any damage to the panel. And then we'll do the same thing over on this other side. So we'll be able to get all three pieces here. Before we test this panel out and glue the fiberglass on, I've noticed that the surface I'm gluing here is kind of a faded color. That is the other side. You can see it's more of that charcoal gray. My understanding is that these can fade if they're in the sun. I just bought this panel, but maybe it was getting exposed to UV where it was being stored. So anyway, it's supposed to be fine according to the manufacturer. So we're just gonna give it a quick light sanding and see if we darken it back up. And then it'll be good to clean up and glue some fiberglass back onto it. So let's take a look. So that did darken it slightly. It's not quite the same color as the back, but I think it's gonna be good. It feels good. So let's laminate some glass to this and see how it comes out. Oh, I'm trying to flatten out the table because when we had the water damage, it puckered up a few spots and I want to use the table as a flat surface. So we're making it a flat surface with this file here and we're almost there. That'll work. Okay, so these panels are looking good. We've got the first coat of unthickened epoxy on, so I think we're about ready to put the glass down. Hopefully this works, we'll see. Fingers crossed. All right, those 3 pieces are looking really good. The epoxy is curing now. We have a nice tight bend on those. I think it's gonna work out well, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, my sister is here in town with her 4 kids from the East Coast of Canada, and we are gonna go out and see her right now. So I'm hoping to get these cured up fast enough that I can shave them off when they're still just in that kind of plasticky stage. So we'll see if I can make that in time. We're gonna wheel this outside to help it cure up faster. Well, I'm really happy with the way these are coming out so far. We were able to pry these off the table yesterday before I had to take off, and they came up pretty easily, and the edges were still a little bit flexible, but they were dry to the touch. They weren't tacky anymore. So we just cut them all off with a knife, and you can see this piece here is very stiff now. It's completely formed that shape. Obviously that's what fiberglass does, but it's interesting how that was flexible this time yesterday, and now it is pretty much rock solid. So getting there early means that this will be hopefully fairly easy to clean up with the sander. We'll just touch these edges, get all that cleaned up. As soon as I got inside yesterday to have a little snack, I realized I'd made a little mistake, and if you were watching carefully, you might already know what that was. Now, maybe this happens to you where you, in your brain, you've gone over something so many times that the people in your life wonder if you're even around because you're stuck in your head thinking about how to do something. Well, you know, I've been kind of thinking about the steps for this procedure and different procedures for a long time. And then as soon as you get to it, you end up missing something. So it's just a part of being human, I guess. But I forgot to round over this edge before we went to laminate the glass. So my thought was to break the edge, even use a 1/8 inch round over router bit on that to give a nice smooth edge, because the glass doesn't like to hit a hard 90. But I forgot to do that. And thankfully, I think because we had that jig and we used some weights and clamps to push everything in, I think we've been able to pull it off. So you can actually see that this corner has formed quite nicely. And it looks like we have gotten away with it this time. As I was having my lunch, I was thinking what I would probably have to do is clean up the surfaces, make sure they're totally square, and then route it over and put another layer of glass over. So what can happen if you don't have them forced down like I did, you'll have these little gaps, little air bubbles, a ridge maybe across the top. Especially if you're doing a hand lamination that's not supported, it can rise up if it has to bend over too far. So it seems like I got away with it. In general, you don't want to wrap glass around an edge that's too hard. So we'll pull this ply off, the peel ply, see what it looks like underneath, clean these up, and hopefully they're ready to go into the bow. Well, with the peel ply off, I can detect just the slightest amount of a bump there perhaps, so it might have raised up slightly, but I think with the thickened epoxy that I put in there before I wrapped it, it looks like it's all closed up, so I don't see a gap per se. So we're gonna leave this. It's also not a critical part. So, you know, another lesson learned, and life goes on. Test fit looks good. All the pieces line up nicely. So we've put a little bit of a taper here on this edge now. I'm not sure if that's coming through very well, but these are going to slide together nicely, fit up inside the bow, and with that little bit of a profile ground in, we'll put a piece of cloth over that just to make sure it's all one nice big piece. So the interior of the bow is cleaned up, ready to go. We'll give these a quick acetone wipe and then glue these into the boat. Let's do it. Well, the panels went down really nicely, and now we have the anchor locker deck reestablished, and that feels great. So I think this is the perfect time for me to ask for you to hit that like button. It's right down there, and it really does help move this channel along, so I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Now, you might have wondered, what are these blue rectangles that we're reusing? And these are actually 18-pound weights that I recovered from a file cabinet that I was taking to the dump a while ago. So saved these for just this sort of thing, and I think that was enough weight distributed along these panels such that we didn't need to put any screws into these, and I think we got a lot of great squish out, and these are gonna be held down just fine without any additional screws. Once this all had some time to cure, I went ahead and removed all of the weights, took a look, and it looks great. So we cleaned it all up, we leveled down the patches at the forward end. There is a gap along the outside edge, and this is because I didn't use a lot of thickened epoxy around that edge when I installed these panels. That's something that I definitely could have done, but I knew I'd come back to fill that, and we're gonna put a nice fillet on this whole edge before we put the tabbing down. I had a tip a while back from one of the viewers about using these clear piping bags. These bags do a great job of putting the epoxy exactly where you want it, so I'll put a link to these down below in the description. Let's get to work. Let's take a quick second to say thanks to the folks on Patreon that really helped make this channel a possibility, especially the folks whose names are appearing now on the screen. Thank you all so much. If you're interested in joining the Patreon group, you can check out this link right up here. Last time we were all together, we took a look at these deck hatch panels, and these are made out of HDPE solid 1/2 inch, and they're a cool idea. Unfortunately, they weren't really well designed. They had this split down the center and there was no beam there to support them, so they would sag pretty significantly, and this one is still shaped that way a little bit. So we're gonna replace these so that I can do some work above if I need to, and I'm not sure what I'm gonna use for my final material. This might be a great solution in the end, but for now we're gonna cut out some temporary ones. We're just gonna use OSB, the cheap wood option, and to get the shape right, we're just gonna go back to our door skin. So this is just 1/8 inch, super cheap, great for making patterns. And I'm gonna put some of this on its side, on the edges, around the sides, to give me a bit of a relief. So we'll size it with that, and we'll cut it out exactly using the track saw, and they should fit perfectly in there. So let's get going on that. Okay, that is definitely a more than adequate fit. I'm very pleased with that. It's nice to have this back together so I can get inside here and be supported and not worried about falling through into the anchor locker, never to be recovered again. So let's see if we fit in here. Okay, it feels really nice and supported. I like this. And it's a little on the cramped side though for a V-berth, so hopefully I won't have to sleep in here. But I think what we'll do next now is down below, behind this bulkhead, there's another platform down there that I'd like to put back in. So there's a teak beam you've seen before that mounts on this end of the bulkhead. I think if we get that reattached, then I'll be able to put this floor back in. A little embarrassed to show you what I have been using to stand on while I did this work, and it's makeshift at best. Getting the floor back in there is going to be a real good move. Let's get going on that. Preparing to get this beam installed, and there is a bit of a gap here in the center. That's probably not a huge surprise because we have 3 layers of tabbing on the sides, so that pushes it out there and creates a gap in the middle. I want to get this bolted in nicely and all sealed up with epoxy. We're going to first locate it using the holes that we've already pre-drilled through there with the epoxy plugs. So on the end here I have this little wooden block, and this is the jig that I made for securing the anchor road cleat or pad eye to. And this is just going to help me drill straight through. We'll put a piece of wood on the inside to protect the blowout when the drill bit comes through the fiberglass. And then once we get at least 2 holes located, we should be able to get the piece situated, trace out the curve, get a nice decent fit, and then we'll pop this thing on with some epoxy here. Now I am tempted just to fill that gap with epoxy, but this beam you'll see is a little short. Maybe an 1/8 to 3/16 needs to move in, so that's about what we have there for a gap. Maybe a little more generous there, but that's okay. So we're gonna adjust this now. Before we glue in that aft beam, which is otherwise ready to go, I had a thought. I remembered that I wasn't very happy with the access to this compartment before. These are the covers that go over that space, and as you can see, they're seamed right here in the center along that beam. There's some cutouts on the bottom corner of that one and on the edge of this one, and those are where some old hoses went, and I think that's a great place to route those. Because these panels are captive by those hoses, the removal of the panel is very difficult. Let me install these and show you what I mean. Well, the panels don't fit perfectly, and that's not a huge surprise since we have a brand new bulkhead here that we're dealing with. But I think for the purpose of demonstration, these still make a lot of sense. So you can see how they fit, and you can imagine that with the hoses and everything binding on the edges, these were very difficult to remove, making access below kind of impossible. So what we'll do is we'll put in new beams like we did at the forward section off to each side, so there'll be a center section that can be easily removed and is all well supported. So the center beam might stay. We might also need to take it out if we need to make room for some extra height, maybe for a bow thruster. Stay tuned for more on that. That's a general idea. Let's make some room in this forward beam for the new beams that will get grafted into it, and then we can go ahead and glue it in. Off camera, I made a few more of these aluminum beams, and this is just like the one that I used forward, and these two are going to go back and lay just like this, so that we'll be able to get an open compartment in the center. We'll have a cover on this, and then off to port and starboard we can have individual panels that have the cutouts that we need for the different hoses and things. So before we go ahead and glue in the forward beam, we're going to machine out the reliefs for these two beams, because it's easy to do now before it's glued in, and the one on the aft section is going to have to be done the old-fashioned way, with the chisel. And so I'm going to do my very best to give Aladino a run for his money, but no promises there. We'll see how that goes. This epoxy mixed up a little on the purple side, which is a little interesting, but it's just because the hardener does get darker over time. It doesn't affect the strength at all. So this is gonna be totally fine, and I will prove that to you very soon. This is looking really good over here. I'm very excited about how well it's coming together. So come back next time for more building fun over here at the Antidote project. If you're new to the channel and you'd like to get caught up from the very beginning, you can check out the playlist right here. And if you'd like to subscribe for more of these videos, I'd love that. And the button is hidden right inside there. See y'all next time. Off camera, I made a few more of these aluminum beams. These are exactly like, my name is John, and the boat on, John, and the boat behind me is not behind me.